Okay, let's talk The Adventures of Honey and Leon. Also, I apologize. Please do your best to ignore this popped pimple on my nose. So, back in December of 2021, I flew to New York to do a workshop of The Adventures of Honey and Leon. And just before we were ready to go into our first rehearsal for that workshop, we learned that one of the actors had COVID, and basically this was the time of the Omicron surge, and it was decided, rightfully so, that we should just cancel the workshop. And then I decided to hop on a plane and come home because I didn't want to be by myself in New York while Omicron was surging. And that is kind of what set the tone for the beginning of this year. I entered 2022 with a real sense of uncertainty, not knowing what was happening, and I would say the first 2 months of this year were really hard because of that. I had built up quite a bit of excitement leading into that December 2021 workshop, and then it felt like I was then flying home with my tail between my legs, very Charlie Brown. So that kind of set me up to just constantly be thinking nothing is guaranteed, nothing is guaranteed. So even though I knew about the residencies that I had lined up, Willapa Bay, McDowell, and even though I knew that I had other things coming up, like the La Jolla Playhouse workshop, and eventually the production of Honey and Leon, that big letdown in December really affected me, and I found it hard to believe that any of these things would actually happen. And I think I've said this in other videos, but any opportunity I had, I literally did not believe it was going to happen or happen smoothly until it actually happened. So fast forward all the way to this last month when I was in New York City, and the rehearsal process went surprisingly well. From my perspective, as the writer of the show at least, that's the only perspective I can speak of. But our rehearsal process, the 2 weeks we had at the Ripley Greer Studios, we were able to stage the show and actually get about, I think, 4 run-throughs in before heading into tech. And of course, I credit that to just having amazing people in the rehearsal room, our phenomenal cast, our director, Camille Howard, our choreographer, Michael Rain, our music director, Jason Leibson, and our stage management team, Tyler Danhouse and E.A. Meyer. The fact that we were able to get 4 solid run-throughs in before tech, that was huge. I mean, that's the way it should be always, but those of us in theater know it definitely does not turn out that way. I would say a good most of the time. So because things were going so well, there was a part of me that just was nervous, waiting for the other shoe to fall or whatever the phrase is. And of course, once we hit tech, there's always tech stuff that happens during the tech rehearsals. What the pandemic has taught me is this sense of letting go of the results. And of course, everything was going so well. And then when problems were coming up during tech, first of all, none of those problems are my job as the writer. I can only do so much. So I really reached this place of I have to just let go and trust that we are going to get to this opening. And even if we don't, even if COVID comes and infects people and we have to cancel, I have to be ready for that, and I have to be thankful for the time that we've had, or we'll find a way to adjust or rework the schedule. I don't know. But the main point is that I think I've had enough practice now of letting the results be what they are. That doesn't mean I don't have any feelings about them. And that doesn't mean that I don't have hopes for what I think they could be, but I think it's just being honest about how much control I actually have, and then also how much energy do I actually have to spend stressing out about these things. Like, that's not actually going to help me or anybody else, me just being worried and stressed about how it's going to turn out. So all that to say, I am very happy to report we made it to opening. There were no COVID cancellations, and then we made it to closing. And I was ready for, opening weekend to happen, and then maybe COVID cases occurring, so we'd have to cancel second weekend, or we'd get to the second weekend and then maybe we'd have to cancel our closing weekend. It was only 3 weekends. But I am so happy to report that we were able to finish out our run. So I am just thankful. I'm thankful that a show happened. This was my first production after the start of the pandemic. I should clarify, this is my first production of a new work. There was a production of a show of mine, Song of the Nightingale, that was done in Beijing, I think in early 2021. So I am just feeling pretty great about the whole thing. Like, everything went pretty darn well, and it seemed like the audiences who came really enjoyed it. Like I said, our cast is phenomenal, and I also think they enjoyed being in the show. I hope they did, but I felt like their performances were just effervescent and really engaging and a lot of fun. And then I was also on TV, which I will share about in my next vlog. But then, for closing weekend, Mr. Alan Cumming and Mr. Grant Schaefer were actually able to attend our final performance. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there, but I saw the photos, and Alan Cumming posted about the show on his Instagram, and that just felt like the best way to close out the run was to have the authors of the book, The Adventures of Honey and Leon, actually come and see the show. And Alan Cumming's like, it was a very surreal experience, which makes sense because this is a book about his dogs that have since passed away that he wrote. And now he's watching grown adults portraying these dearly departed dogs on stage, singing and dancing. But he also mentioned how moved he was by it. And that was really wonderful to read and to know that I didn't just create something that was just fun. There's nothing wrong with just fun or just entertaining, but I really wanted there to be an emotional heart to the piece, and I'm glad that that resonated for Alan and Grant. So all this to say, yeah, it was a great run for The Adventures of Honey and Leon, the musical, and I am sure the question is then, what's next? I don't quite know. Hopefully there's interest in the show, and that means it'll get produced in different parts of the country by different theater companies. But for me, it feels good. I don't know how else to put it. I feel very glad that it happened. It feels like I'm working again, and I know that there's still in the news everything, right? Not just COVID, but wars and still political things and social justice issues. It's still a mess. Nothing is solved. But it was nice to have this tangible project come to fruition and to have great people to work together with and to feel like we did something, and hopefully it made an impact on the folks and the children who came to watch it. So that's that. I just wanted to kind of share a little bit of what it's been like to work on this show. And like I mentioned, I'll be sharing a bit about what it was like to be on TV in my next video. And for me, it's just a return back to my desk at home to do some at-home writing for the next few weeks. The ebbs and flows of being a writer for the stage. All right, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for bearing with my nose, and I will see you all next time.